What's up, guys? Another video while I'm driving today, simply because this is on my mind at the moment and this is a good time to, I guess, start talking about it. Today I want to talk about genetics, and genetics are something that get brought up in bodybuilding, powerlifting, whatever, any strength sport. Genetics get brought up a lot, and especially when you look at the top level, genetics do play a big part in your respective sport. But I think this gets used too, what's the word? This gets used too carelessly. A lot of people assume that genetics are everything in strength sport, but I don't think that's necessarily the case. They are a major component, but I'm of the belief that consistency and hard work and effort and all of those things are significantly more important than genetics. If you're an athlete of any sort, hopefully you've heard the quote, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And there are a lot of people that have really good genetics that I've seen both in bodybuilding and powerlifting that have just never really reached their full potential, at least as of yet, because they don't really work hard. And on the flip side, I've seen a lot of people who don't really have great genetics, but they've made pretty decent progress just because they outwork everybody. I like to think that I'm one of those people, at least so far. Obviously, we'll see where this takes me over time, but as of now, I like to believe that I'm one of those people who doesn't really have great genetics, but they just really fucking work hard, a lot harder than everybody else. But specifically, this is going to be related more to bodybuilding, as that's the field that I specialize in, is bodybuilding, more so than powerlifting and everything. So there are different kinds of genetics. What I like to do is I like to categorize genetics into two categories. I have what I call physical genetics, and then I have mental/emotional genetics. And I think when genetics get thrown around in the bodybuilding industry, 99% of the time they're referring to physical genetics. But when I look at genetics, I like to look at the emotional/mental genetics a lot more than I look at physical genetics, because I really do think that they're more important. Maybe not necessarily in the realm of the IFBB or anything, or high level NPC, but I do think in reaching your full potential, understanding the emotional/mental genetics are a lot more important than the physical genetics. So what do I mean when I say physical genetics? Well, physical genetics have a lot to do with the structure of an individual. For example, if you have a very wide clavicle, that means that you're naturally going to have very broad shoulders, which, assuming that's combined with a good set of legs and a dominant quad sweep and a slim waist, that's going to give you a very prominent, more profound V-taper, which is obviously going to make your waist look smaller and make you look wider and bigger. And having some good width to your frame is obviously extremely important when we look at competitive bodybuilding. Another physical genetic is as I relate this to the wide clavicle, is some people just have a genetically very small waist. There are some people that when they get super lean, they have like a 26-inch waist or a 25-inch, 27-inch waist, and that's just a physical genetic. They have very narrow hip bones. Their hip structure is just thinner than normal, and that's something that's completely genetic. Obviously, you can't change the width or the size of your of your hip bones and your pelvis and everything, but that's just simply a genetic trait. There are some people that are what I call hyper responders to two things. One, there are some people that are hyper responders to training. They may do 2 sets of calf training during their week, and their calves grow because of it. And then one that's talked about a lot is hyper responsive to drugs. There are some people that they take 250 milligrams of, test prop, and it looks like you would think that they were taking 500 milligrams of test prop and, X amount of milligrams of tren and maybe some growth hormone and shit too. But these guys just have a very good genetic response to taking anabolic steroids in small amounts. I think of Kevin Levrone in this context. This guy in his off season would literally look like a normal person, and then he would take, we obviously don't know his cycle and how many drugs he was taking, but he would just literally transform into the Hulk, and he was just a hyper responder to drugs. Now, I don't really think that's anything that you can argue. Relating this to anabolic steroids, there are some people that have a genetic response to drugs in terms of the side effects, in the sense that they can take very high amounts of anabolic steroids and they just don't experience side effects, or their health markers completely stay intact, their liver enzymes and their cholesterol and everything. It just stays intact despite the fact that they're taking just massive amounts of exogenous hormones. But those physical genetics, I really think on like a scale, they're outweighed by the mental/emotional genetics, and some of the very prominent mental emotional genetics are going to be pain tolerance first and foremost. Pain tolerance in the gym and pain tolerance outside of the gym. So for example, pain tolerance within a set or within a workout session. If can you continue to push through when you feel beaten down and battered in the gym? Now, doing that smart, obviously, we don't want to burn ourselves into the ground and destroy our central nervous system. That's a different topic for a different day. But being able to, say, mid-set, as the lactate and the pyruvate starts to accumulate mid-set, like, can you mentally and physically push through that pain barrier and get more reps and things like that. Pain tolerance in terms of dieting, both off-season and pre-contest. Pre-contest dieting and getting superficially lean like that is, I don't want to say it's painful, like physically painful, but you need to have a pretty high pain tolerance to be able to, you need to have a pretty high pain tolerance to be able to withstand that for, a long period of time. And there are some people in the off season where the amount of calories and food that they need to eat to grow is just absurd. And so they need to have a very high pain tolerance in order to be able to eat all of that food day in and day out and not take days off. We've got pain tolerance as that relates appetite. I think the bigger that you get in the sport, whether it be powerlifting or bodybuilding, the bigger that you get, the more that you're going to have to eat in order to continue that progress or even maintain the progress that you've already made. And being able to have a consistent appetite like that is extremely important. Being able to eat that, like for example, at the peak of my last bulking phase, right, my last growing phase, I was eating about 4,800 calories a day, every single day. 100-ish grams of fat, anywhere from 600 to 700 grams of carbohydrates, and 300 to 350 grams of protein a day. And I was doing that day in and day out. Even when I'd go visit my girlfriend for the weekends, I would be gone. I would be gone from home and I wouldn't have food, but I would go to like a grocery store, to restaurants, and I would buy the food that I needed for the week, because I was gone from home and I didn't have that structure didn't mean that I could take the days off from eating. That more so relates to consistency. I just pulled into my house, so I'm just going to sit here in my car and talk to myself for a little bit instead of driving. So anyways, having consistency and being able to stay consistent with your diet and stay consistent with your training, even though you're on the road, is a big deal. I know a lot of people, I'm going to turn my car off. I know a lot of people that, like myself personally, like when I go to different gyms that I'm not used to, like my home gym, it's harder for me to get sessions in. But I know a lot of people that they just simply won't train in a situation like that. They won't train unless they're comfortable, and to an extent, especially, I guess the higher you get up in the sport, if you have to do things like guest poses, traveling, things like that for the sport-related business, like you need to be able to get the work done in situations where you're not comfortable in doing so. So consistency is extremely important. Consistency with your diet. I think Jay Cutler said it best, and I have experienced my best results in doing this is eating the same things every day at the same time and being just like monotonously consistent. It's extremely boring, but I really do think the best bodybuilders and the best powerlifters are the ones that have the best tolerance to doing the same things day in and day out, and they never get bored and they never have to switch anything, and they just literally live every day as if it were Groundhog Day with their diet and their training and everything. Every day is the same. I think those are the athletes that get the best results, you know what I mean? So yeah, I think having the really strong mental and emotional genetics, like having a good appetite, high pain tolerance, being consistent, being disciplined, those type of things are way more important than these physical genetics, in my opinion. Wide clavicle, narrow waist, all those kinds of things. So I know a lot of people that are pretty quick to write themselves off, that they can't reach their goal or something that they don't, because they don't have wow, nice stutter. They don't have the genetics to do so. And I think you really need to look at the mental and emotional genetics more than the physical genetics and stuff like that. So anyways, take it easy, guys. Talk to you soon.